Hi, everyone. I am here today with Katie. We are very excited to be walking our DMI capstone students through finding their first digital media job. Hey, Katie, how are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm always excited to spend my day with you. Can you tell us about the DMI capstone students and what are they doing this semester?
Yeah, absolutely. So our DMI capstone students are really the heart of this DMI program here at Texas State University, which is one of our newer programs that was implemented back in 2016. So these students are really wonderful. They're seniors this year. They're in their final stretch. They really do represent this DMI program. The course really explores digital entrepreneurship, and we've been working all semester long on really interesting stuff. These students have been working really hard on creating their portfolios with Bootstrap. And so they've been doing coding and all that fun jazz and kind of culminating all of their past coursework and all the wonderful things that they've produced throughout their time in this program. And so I'm really excited for them. They're going to do wonderful things and they're getting ready to head off into the real world and apply to these jobs. And so I'm really excited that these students and these panelists are able to join us today to talk a little bit about this.
Thank you, Katie. I know the impetus for today's panel and last week's panel really came from a session that I did with this class, and they said, we are most concerned about how do we find a job. And they said, why are we not always talking about this? This is the one thing that we need to know about. And so that's why we are doing this today. Can I get everyone who's here to introduce yourselves and tell us what part of digital media you're interested in? We can start on the top and kind of move our way down.
I guess I can start with me. My name is Bray Citizen, and I'm more into digital marketing. Wanted to get more into that, start doing like marketing.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go next. My name is David, and I would say I'm more interested in like the social media, but particularly like video aspect of it.
Wonderful.
And I'm really interested in creative direction and just like creative ad agencies and things like that.
My name is Emily Stager, and I would say I'm more interested in the social media marketing aspect as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming and saying hi. We also have some people on LinkedIn as well as on X. Don't be afraid to ask questions in the chats there as well at any point as we're moving through today, because we're here for you and we're here to have these conversations because of you. And I just wanted to extend the biggest thanks to this panel of wonderful people. Yes, hello. I'm going to introduce you in just a moment. I'm really excited to be here with both of you. Down at the bottom here, Paige and Giselle, you are the first time I'm meeting with both of you, but you came highly recommended through Cindy Royal as former alumni and people who work at our school. And then Carolyn as well, who is someone who I have known for a very long time. And I'm just so grateful to have you all here today. Before we begin, I'm just going to kind of read off some brief bios and give you an opportunity to say hello. So Carolyn follows her dreams. She's an urban planner, fashion designer, international developer worker, celebrity assistant, talent manager, entrepreneur, publicist, and she was even one of Canada's first fashion bloggers. She loves writing so much, she wrote a novel inspired by her experience volunteering at Toronto Fashion Week. I also used to do that and work there from time to time. She now, not the book, but we were probably there at the same time. She now focuses on communication and has worked at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, United Way, and Rocky Mountaineer as a communications expert. She now works at the City of Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada, which is where I'm originally from, and is the president of the Canadian Public Relations Society in the Vancouver chapter. And that is actually where Carolyn and I most recently had the fortune of working together, was on the board for the Canadian Public Relations Society together. So welcome, Carolyn. Thank you so much for coming today. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. It's so nice to be here. I'm happy to chat with all of you. One thing is that I have been looking for a job myself for the last few months. So I have a whole bunch of techniques and learnings and studyings that I've done that I'm so happy to pass on to you.
Thank you so much. And then Giselle is a Texas State grad, raised in Texas Hill Country with roots in Puerto Rico. She produces podcasts, social content, videos, and campaign strategies for Texas State's university marketing, and is a Texas State alum. We are so excited to have you here. And I know that Cindy Royal just had wonderful things to say about both of you. So thank you for coming. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. In regards to my career, this has been my first big girl job right out of college. So I do have some strategies in relation to that, especially for those that are juniors and seniors going into the workforce. So that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm 24, so I'm on the younger side, and I've really enjoyed working for Texas State, and I've learned a bunch. And I know one of the students that was on that panel said that she wanted to learn a little bit about creative direction, and my job has also moved a lot into that side as well, that I work in person and I get to be on shoots a lot of the time. So while a lot of what I focus on is social media, I kind of touch a lot of different sides of the coins in terms of marketing. So very, very fortunate to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Giselle. When did you begin this big girl job?
I started this in 2022. So I graduated December of 2021, and I started January right after that, right after the Christmas break from graduation.
Wonderful. So, I mean, basically, these students are kind of in that beginning stage. So that's exciting. Paige Whitis is a Texas State University alum. You got a BA in mass communication. That's really exciting. And a digital advertising strategist at the university. She began her digital media career at San Marcos startup focused on small business digital presence, followed by freelance work and roles in the full service agency in New Braunfels, where she advanced from a social media strategist to a director of digital marketing before taking her current role at Texas State. Hi, Paige. I'm so excited to have you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I've crammed a lot of experience into just a few years since graduating from Texas State, and I'm happy to share about all of that. And I know that everyone's in a really great program, so happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And, the students are down below, but we can bring them back up at any point. We do have some students, hi, Griffin, saying hello to us in the chat. I just want to ask you a couple questions, but to get started, what is a piece of advice that you wish people had given you before you started your job search role, either the most recent one or at the very beginning? What is that one piece of advice people should have given you? And feel free to take it away, whoever wants to jump in.
I don't mind starting if y'all would like. I would say probably the biggest piece of advice that I wish I had gotten is, well, one, that your first job doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be your dream job. It's really more important to just get the experience that's going to get you the momentum to where you want to go. And also not to undervalue the experience that you gain in college through your projects, through your classes, through freelance work, kind of any side gigs you have, even family business. That's kind of how I got a little bit of the credentials and confidence to start applying for full-time roles.
Very good. Giselle, Carolyn?
Yeah, I could piggyback off that. I was going to say that knowing what you don't like is just as important as what you do like. Whenever I first started my job or looking for jobs too, I also felt like I had decision paralysis because I liked so many things. I enjoyed so many parts of marketing and I didn't know where I fit in necessarily. But I quickly figured out, with MassCom Week and things like that, that I don't like the music industry that much. And so I don't think I could have worked in social media for music. And so that made my decisions a lot easier. And I knew what I was good at writing about and what I was good in terms of scheduling as well. News didn't work for me either because you're having very different schedules. So I think that's very important, is like writing down like pros and cons lists of the industries that you're looking at as well, especially when you're in that job force, because there's a lot of options. So that helped me with narrowing down where I wanted to go eventually.
Very good advice, Carolyn.
I agree with both Paige and Giselle. And I also want to add that when I was first starting out, now that was quite a while ago, but some advice that I got was kind of like, you need to know exactly where you're going and where you're going to be for the rest of your life. You don't need to know that. So my advice is to, yes, it is stressful, but to try not to stress out about that, because as Paige and Giselle and me, like, I'm a generalist. I just, like Giselle was saying, I'm just into so many different things, and I'm exploring what interests me. So when I'm searching for the job, people are asking me, what job are you searching for? Like, how can I help you? I'm like, well, I'll know it when I see it. Like, the job description will speak to you, but also don't be too picky. As Paige, as both of you were saying, that the first job is a foot in the door, and you'll start getting that experience. So don't fret. You are at a junior level at this point. So take the job, but just make sure that like, sorry, I have so much to say. Like, I can just talk about this forever, but I just want to make sure that you are recognized with the value that you do bring, because there's been a lot of jobs that I've had where I am underpaid and overutilized, and you just need to know when to speak up. But I think that's getting in more. We're probably going to be talking about that later. But yeah, I just have so much to share with you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy you are all here. This is a wonderful conversation. So I guess it all starts with this document, right, that we call a resume, and in some cases a portfolio, depending on what kind of a career you're in. So I'm guessing that you have strategies that you use for your own resume, or there's things that you do to try to like get noticed. What are those pieces of advice like that you want to give others that this has worked really well for me, or this has not worked very well for me, either with your portfolio or that resume document? What's a good set of advice that we can give this group of students?
I will say that a lot of students, I've heard, at least from the interns that we work with, sometimes that they'll look at jobs that say you need experience before you get this job. And they're like, how can I get experience if this is my first job? I will say that you have to be creative when you're thinking about what you have done in relation to the jobs that might be odd jobs. Those odd jobs are just as important as the jobs that you are looking for within your industry. If you're working in the service industry, you are doing customer service and you know how to talk to customers. So that is a communication skill. So skills are very transferable. So don't think that your skills are undervalued just because it's not in the same market. You just have to think a little bit differently. And you can use something like, I've learned this from Paige, because Paige and I work in the same department, ChatGPT. If you can give them some of those experiences, you can tell ChatGPT, what can I write in my resume that would relate to social media for this? So like using that creative side to bring out what might seem boring or a little out of tune to what you're doing, it's actually very important eventually, and somebody in the job market will also see that and be like, okay, this person actually has transferable skills, if that makes sense.
100% does.
Long way to say that.
Oh, that's great. Carolyn?
Yeah, I'd also say one thing that I've learned with this round of searching for jobs is in your experience, highlight the results that you're getting. Employers are really liking the results. So if you have, if you don't have that work experience yet, but you have managed a social media account for, let's say, a friend of a friend's business or something like that, or your own, include something like, managed 4 social media accounts and grew followers by X% and engagement by Y%. And that really helps, rather than just saying manage 4 social media accounts.
Absolutely. Everything that you've both said, I completely agree with. Giselle made a great point about using ChatGPT to take those skills that you might not think are relevant, but they really might be if you think creatively about it. My biggest piece of advice, and it's so basic that it almost feels like it could go without saying, is double, triple, quadruple check your resume. I myself am guilty. I had submitted probably 12 resumes at one point in my job journey and realized that I had experience spelled wrong as a section header title. And having looked at plenty of resumes too, in my experience, it's like you'd be surprised by how many typos and errors do happen, and how that really reflects upon you. So just always be careful, run it through AI, run it through another person, do everything you can to make sure it is all good and clean.
Can I just jump back into and say that double check when you save something to PDF as well, because formatting changes sometimes when you change it to PDF. So you don't want to send that off without looking at it.
Paige, can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by run it through AI? Like what tips do you have for people there?
Absolutely. That would just be one aspect that I would use in that spell check and just like kind of formatting check process. But just being able to give it a very clear prompt and asking, please review this resume, look for punctuation, spelling, grammatical errors, and then just check also what it gives back to you, because it's not always perfect either. But it's a really great starting point to build upon, because I mean, if you're building your document in Word or Canva, there might be some built-in spell checking, but using AI can be really helpful. And then again, also in addition to that, making sure that you're running it by a person also.
So Griffin here says, yes, I always see the entry-level jobs that say you need experience, and I'm always confused about how you gain experience when you haven't even had a job yet. And I think that's really frustrating, is how many entry-level jobs now say this. So what kind of things, or how can they repackage the experience they have in university through the clubs they're doing? I mean, all these students are amazing. They're all in extracurriculars. They're all in so many classes. How do you recommend that they repackage those onto their CV?
I would say this is specifically what I did in undergrad that got me to the job I have today, is that talking to your professors, especially the ones that you have close relationships with or the ones that you want to get close relationships with, asking them whatever you can do to help them in terms of they might have a job. They might have a job for you that's lying around to use in that sense. Like, I don't know if you guys know Dale Blassingame. He's kind of like an icon here in mass communication. Shout out to him. He very much helped me in my job search because he gave me so many odd jobs, like odd little internships on the side. While that being said, sometimes that doesn't happen, but you can always look around to your family. Like, I helped my parents with their Medicare like emails, and that is considered experience. So whatever you are touching that is digital is experience. If you think about it in that way, that's how I would package it.
I love that. And then we had this other question that I also think was really, really interesting. Lily Gold says, do you have things that you leave off your resume? Like, what do you think you should leave off the resume? Carolyn, any tips here?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go back to the other question as well, and talk about volunteering a little bit, about gaining experience, because as the president of a professional organization, the Canadian Public Relations Society, that is a really great place for you to meet people who have jobs, because if you volunteer for them, they can see what great work you are doing, and even if they don't have jobs, they can act as a resume, as a reference for you when that time is right. So I know that I also talked about making sure that your work is valued, but volunteering and giving back is important too, and that's how you can get a lot of experience. But again, to make sure that you don't get taken advantage of. And then back to Lily's question about advice to leave off the resume. What I've learned now is to not add hyperlinks into your resume and cover letters, because bots, sometimes the screening bots see it as spam. And so that might take you out of the running. So, keep your LinkedIn profile, and try to shorten the URL if you haven't done it already. Like, try to shorten it to your own name, rather than having the really long one that they give you.
I had no idea about the
I know, right?
Anyone else want to jump in?
I could speak a little bit about the skills portion of your resume. I've seen a lot of resumes whenever I'm doing I'm on an interview. What's the word I'm looking for whenever you're interviewing someone? I guess like the committee panel, something like that, is that there's a ton of skills, and I'm like, I don't want to read through all of them, but we do ask for a cover letter. And I think cover letters are a great place to also include your skills, because sometimes in a resume, you want to see only one page and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I want to talk about myself. I think a cover letter is a great place to put that, not necessarily fluff, but those extra things that are not so much like the hard skills, as in like Adobe Photoshop, writing, that kind of thing, like the more personality part of you, like what part of your personality actually works for that job, can be placed in a cover letter rather than putting it in your skills on your resume.
So the next one is, what are common mistakes that people make when they're building their resume or when they're building their portfolio or even that cover letter? We haven't talked about that. What are the mistakes that people make, or what are the mistakes you have made, even personally?
I've heard differing opinions about cover letters, but I love to include a cover letter. Is exactly what Giselle was talking about. That's where you can show your personality. You can be businessy and professional, but you can still show your personality. And one mistake that I often see in cover letters when I've had to hire somebody is using I too much, because obviously you're going to be talking about yourself because this is you. But I like to turn my cover letter around and tell and talk to the employer, like, you need this person and I can help you by doing this. And definitely make sure that you look down the side of your page and see how many of your paragraphs start with I, and try to change some of those to you, because you're trying to show the employer what you can do for them.
Good tip. Anything else? Paige, do you have any advice?
Yes. Well, I mentioned earlier, just being sure to check your resume as many times. Like, if you think you've checked it enough, you probably haven't. Everything like those little mistakes can slip through sometimes. And as I said, I did have a typo in mine that I was using for much longer than I realized. So that's one mistake I had made. And then, as Carolyn had mentioned, also, it's really important to look at your formatting. It is really common to run into issues when you're exporting your file from one file type to another type. And something I think that stands out also is that you want your resume to look clean and professional, and you want it to have some personality, I think, but you don't want to go overboard and have too many colors, too many different fonts. That's something that you see pretty often, and sometimes sticking to the basics is really better.
Yeah, one time I created this really beautiful custom little letterhead for myself, and one of my mentors said, "Get rid of it." And they were not afraid to be like, too much personality. Yes, it's you, but no for the job market. And I was like,
on the other hand, I use I put my name and my heading in pink font because I love pink, and it's a little bit crazy, but I'm a little bit crazy. And so if a pink font scares an employer, I don't want to work with them. So it's my screening to them. And I also wanted to say, again, to what to leave off your resume is too much. Leave off too much. Bring in the white space so that people can breathe and read your resume nicely and scan it. Ideally, with the points, you don't want to have more than 5 points underneath each job or skill or whatever section that you have, because what you really want to keep in mind is that your employer is reading or the potential employer is reading a ton of applicants. And the job market is hard right now. Like I have a colleague who has a small marketing firm that specializes in real estate. He had 3,000 applicants for one position. It's crazy. So think about one person, because he doesn't have like an HR department. Think about that one person trying to scan 3,000 applications. So you want to stand out. So make sure that your cover letter and resume can be easily scanned, and don't just pack everything in there. Otherwise, their eyes are going to just gloss over and not be able to absorb what you're trying to give to them.
So let's talk about that. Like the market is sometimes tough, right? It can be a tough place. So how have you navigated that, and has networking helped kind of mitigate any of that? Like, so I guess A is the like, how have you navigated that like difficulty, and B, are there things that have helped make it easier? Anyone really, but maybe we'll start with Giselle. You haven't started yet in a while.
Sure. Networking is one of my favorite things to do. And I think every time I've spoken to a class, I've always started off with networking is the most important thing I did in terms of coming into this job. Talking to just about anybody about what you do and kind of giving that like you asked for a bio, and like giving like a short bio to people that you admire or look up to is kind of one of the best things I would recommend to those that are students that are in that position that they're looking for a job. Even to the people that you see on Instagram that have a cool job that you really like. Maybe it's like your friend's sister who's doing something for a marketing agency and you just want to know. I have a friend that I haven't spoken to in years, and she was from my hometown, and she is the creative designer of this children's brand. And I messaged her on Instagram asking if I could just have a chat with her to see how she got to where she is today. And now we're friends on LinkedIn. And those kind of small little conversations really take you far, because they'll remember you because you actually took the time to ask about who they are and what they do, rather than just liking their photos from afar and sending silent support. I think like actually sending that support and taking that step for those conversations, which I know can be scary. And if they say no, maybe they're not the kind of person you want to work with. But I think that making those connections, and like at least the people that you admire will give you the good advice. And I think that that has taken me far, because those are the people that will remember me in the long run to recommend me for a job eventually. So that's what I would say about networking.
Thank you. Paige?
Yes. I started this job at Texas State about almost a year ago. But I was searching for a new job for quite a while, and I know that the job market is discouraging, and that's coming from somebody with experience. I know that to people who are searching for their first job, it can be even more intimidating and more discouraging when you're going through that sometimes long process. And it might sound cheesy and cliche, but really the old saying that every no gets you closer to a yes is so true. And if your process does take a while, use that time to brush up on your skills, to take courses, certifications. If you're looking to get into something like I do, digital advertising, there's a lot of certifications through Google and through Facebook and those different platforms that are really, really helpful on a resume, even if you don't have job experience. And as for networking, I think Giselle kind of touched on this a little bit. It doesn't have to necessarily be what you think it sounds like. It doesn't have to be necessarily joining networking groups, which is great. I highly recommend it. But it can be as simple as your personal connections. My last 2 jobs, I have gotten through people that I had personal like friendships with, but they happen to know people in my field and make those connections to give me the job. So it doesn't have to be so stiff and professional and forced. It can really be fun, and you never know where your next job opportunity is going to come from.
I do feel like people want to help people. Like I do get that sense that if I know someone is looking for a type of job and I know someone is looking to hire in that, I want to connect them. And I think a lot of people have that sentiment of like, let's help each other out. And so the more you can kind of put yourself out there, I think the better. It sounds like that's kind of what you're saying. That's what I certainly agree with. Carolyn?
Yes, this is why I joined the Canadian Public Relations Society and got involved, because the events are all all about networking. I joined when I moved to Vancouver from Toronto. I was in Toronto for almost 20 years, and then moved to Vancouver, and I didn't have a network. So I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to join this professional organization. So there's so many, I think one place for you to start looking into is the International Association of Business Communicators, because that is an international organization, and so many people belong to that, and it's a great way. You can join, you can attend one of their events as a non-member and meet people through that. For instance, like we have our holiday party coming up that is a joint between IABC and CPRS, and we make sure that we've got activities where we've got like a bingo card where you are sort of forced to meet people. And by the end of that, everybody has met almost everybody in the room. And so any professional organization should be cognizant of that and offer opportunities for you to network. And in relation to internships that's going on in the chat, in the comment section, I don't think you necessarily need to have an internship, but volunteering, again, for a lot of these organizations is where you can meet and network people very naturally, because you're not at an event where you don't know anybody and you're a little bit shy about meeting somebody. But if you're volunteering for them, this is where you really get to shine and do the good work that you do, and show them that you're a really good worker.
Yeah, like I think so many great points that you've all just made here. I really appreciate that. And I'm seeing a ton of great questions also starting to populate in the chat. So did you guys have internships before receiving your first job? How would you recommend putting yourselves out there and standing out for internship applications? Natalie says, do you think it's totally necessary to get an internship? What do you think? I think Carolyn said no, but what does everyone else think?
I think getting an internship is pretty crucial, in my opinion, to understanding what the job that you may want will look like. At least I know interns here in our division of marketing and communications, we have had people who are like, this is exactly what I want to do. And then people who have started for a semester and learned this isn't really my jam. And that's kind of what I talked about in the beginning of this, is like knowing what you want to do is just as important as knowing what you don't want to do. But yes, I did have a lot of internships before I started, and it fueled my passion. And I think it also really helped me understand what I needed to do better. So sometimes whenever you're a student, you're very much focused on what you're doing in terms of what you're doing in class, and then you have to apply it to a different situation. And then you realize that it's a totally different world in which you have to put your efforts into, in terms of writing. At least like writing skills get very honed in terms of social media internships. And I think it's super important, because that's something that we're losing in this digital era, especially with AI and, trying to navigate that as well. But I do think internships are very important, but that's just my personal opinion.
Do you want to jump in, Paige, or are you?
Yeah, I have some interesting thoughts. So I think it's important if you're going to have an internship. I wouldn't say it's necessarily necessary. I had one before I sought out a full-time job, but it's important to think about what you want to get out of the internship when you are looking for one. I find that there's internships where they're really looking to teach and kind of have people with more experience ahead of you, giving you the experience and giving you projects to work on and giving you more hands-on advice. And then there are internships where they're looking essentially to fill a role that they're not ready to hire full-time for. And that can be an experience where they're expecting you to really do your own research and come ready to them, as opposed to learning, if that makes sense, from them. So just kind of keeping an eye out on the descriptions to see what kind of internship it might be, and if one or the other would suit your goals and educational journey better.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would agree. I think Is it good to have an internship? Sure. Is it a requirement? No. I think everyone's route and pathway is going to look different, and that's okay. We're all individual people. We're all going to have our own pathway, and there's no one pathway. And so you just have to find the pathway that's your pathway and follow that pathway. What I will say is whether it's an internship or a job, when you find something that you're like, this is not for me, get out of it as soon as you can. Because I've done this twice where I got into jobs and I was like, oh, heck no. The first Carolyn was, I was working as a junior buyer for a really big company in Toronto, a big fashion company. And I was just like, oh, this is not for me. And I knew it like right away. I knew that like, okay, I'm going to be in this just enough that I learn how to do it. So I've given myself a chance, but then get yourself out and repivot and use it as a learning lesson of, okay, so I don't like that, but what do I like? and move yourself forward that way. I think what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring some of our students up from the floor and see if they have any questions for us. And while we're just bringing them up, I noticed Robin said, what do you think about a simple monogram logo on your resume? What do people think about that?
I'm about it. I like them. I think they're cute. As long as it's not taking up so much space, I think it's a great little addition to show off your personality, especially if you're into creative design as well.
Yeah, and add it to your cover letter as well, and just make sure that it's consistent. I reviewed a couple of resumes and cover letters for students last year, and they were different, and I was very surprised about that for communication students. So it's about being consistent and staying true to your own brand. So whatever you do, just make sure that they're the same on your resume and cover letter. I guess to that same note, you probably all have websites that show your work as well. And so make sure that branding is consistent with your resume and cover letter too.
I was just saying, oh yes, that's great advice. Everything should be branded across. I don't know if we've talked about that, but yeah, it should all look consistent. I think we have talked about it, but any questions from the floor? Anything surfacing that you thought this would be a really good question?
I had a question for Caroline. I was going to ask, how do you balance opportunity with stability in your career? Because I'm also really interested in things like fashion and things that are very creative, but I find that a lot of the time the way to get that entry is through like unpaid labor and volunteering, which may require like getting housing for an entirely different city. And I was just wondering, how do you prioritize things like creativity and things that you enjoy versus actually sustaining yourself?
That's a great question, because through my entire career, I've chosen jobs that I love and that interest me versus going after money. So, like right now I'm questioning whether or not that was the right move, but let's be honest, I am far happier than so many other people that I know. So take that advice however you will. But right now, actually, your question relates perfectly, because I'm taking a contract right now and it's not necessarily the job that I want. It's not my dream job, but this contract with the city came up, and it balanced my previous urban planning work, which I started off with in my career, with my communications work now. And I have to say, it was a really smart move for me to take, because even though I don't necessarily love this.
You are on social media, right?
Yeah. No, it's great, but it's been a really great way, because now I'm finding it like I've been enjoying my team, and there's new opportunities that are coming up, and it's within an organization. Now that I'm in the organization, there's a lot of other opportunities that are possibly coming my way. So you never know which way something is going to take you, but don't be open to ones that come to you that may not be exactly right, but let's say and that you've got a dream organization that you want to work with, but there's not that dream job coming up, but you have been offered more of an entry level position somewhere in that organization. Take that and then work your way up. Sometimes that's the way in, but definitely follow your gut and know what's right and what's wrong. And I'm really of the opinion to follow your interests and your dreams rather than what's going to pay you more money. But a lot of people have different different perspectives, but that's mine.
No, I would echo what Carolyn says. I think to have like the most fulfilling life, you kind of need to balance it out, but you really need to think about like what is going to be a satisfying job for me, like that what's going to bring me some joy. I mean, not every job has 100% joy, like let's be honest, there's going to be parts of every job that you don't love as much, but what's going to bring me the most amount of joy, I think, is a really good question. Or what's going to get me to the next job, Carolyn?
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up too that that this one, Micah, that to your question about balancing finances, like I really did take this job because it was offered to me and I needed to pay my mortgage, right? Like this is it. But it has also I'm finding that I'm getting more reactions to my job applications now that I have a job and I'm looking, rather than I don't have a job and I'm looking. So don't be afraid to take that initial job, whatever it is. And actually, this goes to Alicia's question in the chat about what job experience that isn't in the same field. I'm thinking about a student that I met recently who's taken a job, a comm student who's taken a job at a grocery store, for instance, because you need to pay rent. And so I think you could turn that experience into relatable experience in your resume. So for instance, look at what they're asking for in the job description. Like if they're saying this job is all about relationship management, we'll go, okay, well, when I'm working as a cashier at a grocery store, I manage relationships every day with the clients that are coming through. So you can really turn any of those jobs into relevant experience. So don't be afraid.
Thank you. One more student question before I ask my final question. Anyone else?
So I wanted to ask, and I guess this could be for anybody, like in that downtime, I know y'all talked about like working on your skills and brushing up, but I kind of wanted advice on like, how do you keep like your hopes up, like kind of like your dreams, because I feel like while you're sitting there, like how Carolyn brought up earlier, like while you're, like looking for jobs, and I don't know if Giselle and Paige have anything on it, like how to keep your hopes up, because I feel like that can be very like doubtful, and I feel like a lot of people struggle with it. I mean, I do sometimes too while looking on the market.
Same here. I would like to back one off that too. Like even just looking at the market, and like I've had my fair shares of like trying to find internships and like apply to 10 and then get rejected, and then I'm like, I need to just keep my spirits up. But like, I just think that's a great question. Just wanted to back one off that too, because like I know the market is very, very tough when it comes to like looking now. So how do we just keep our hopes up? Like how do we just keep the will just to keep looking for jobs, or not just having to change what we want to do? So yeah.
Wow, this is deep. I think my very simple and maybe corny, I know, like I always revert back to corny because it ends up being correct, at least for myself, is that nothing lasts forever. And I say that both with joy and with sorrow, in the sense that like sad things don't last forever. We always come out of them okay. And then good things also don't last forever. Our market is very cyclical, and this has happened before, and we'll be able to get out of it as well. And although there is no end in sight, there will be a moment where it will work out for you. Like what Paige was saying, that all the no's take you to a yes. It's so incredibly frustrating, but genuinely that mindset, like keeping that mindset, is what will keep you at the top because of how much you persevere. And maybe you won't be able to get the job in that exact field that you want, but you will have a job, and it will take you eventually to the place that you want to be if you are that adamant about it as well. So my thing is nothing lasts forever, and even the good things don't last forever, which is also a very depressing way to look at it, but that's what I'm going to say for that.
I think it's hard to give advice about that because it is all kind of corny and cliche, and it really is sometimes it's hard. So I would say, one, validate your feelings, that the fact that sometimes when you're not able to find a job and you're looking really hard, it does suck. And that's just the facts. But just really sometimes something that's helpful is like, you do want to put in the effort every day and work towards that. But at the same time, don't get down on yourself. Don't burn out. I would say maybe dedicate, if you want to dedicate an hour a day or set aside a number of hours per week that you're actively working on your skills and your applications, and then let yourself take a mental break from that is really helpful. And then something that, just thinking towards the future, eventually you're going to look back at your journey and say it was all worth it, even though it was hard. I looked for a job for quite a long time before landing this role, but it is literally the perfect role. It was exactly what I was looking for. So it will happen eventually. You just have to find your way to keep your hopes up.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is you're in it together, because you're not the only one who's going through that. Carolyn?
I was just going to say, you've got a group right now that I believe that you can reach out to and chat with. I have a chat group with a couple friends that are looking for jobs, and we've the name of the chat group is Every Day is Friday, because so we're trying to be more upbeat, and then we help each other find the jobs. Like, oh, I found this one for you, and I found this one for you. And it's just really nice to share that with people. And you'll find that friends that are also looking for jobs are going to send ones your way as well.
Thank you. I'm just going to just remove people from the floor and ask my final question, which is, what are the biggest takeaways from your job journey so far that are, what's that one piece of wisdom that you could give to these students who are about to move on to that job market?
I think we just gave it like Giselle, but staying positive. I think that's the number one thing that you have to remember, and something is going to come your way, and don't get down, and really don't be worried if you don't find the dream job just yet. The dream job will come.
Yeah, Giselle, that was such a beautiful statement. Anything else to add?
I mean, nothing lasts forever is terrible, but at the same time, enjoy your student freedom. Once you get into the job, it is very much a job. And that's one of the best things pieces of advice I was given was in my first week of starting my job. I was incredibly stressed out, and I was worried that I was doing everything wrong. And one of my coworkers told me, he was like, nothing matters. And I know that it's also another depressing thing, but it's like, nothing matters. Just do your best. And as long as you're doing your best and you're proud of what you are doing, and I'm a perfectionist, so sometimes even when I do my best, I'm still frustrated. I have to remind myself, like, oh my gosh, I'm just writing for social media. Oh my gosh, this is just an Instagram post. Like, this is just a video. And like, I'm always going to give my all in something, but at the end of the day, it's like, you can put it to rest. And like, giving yourself that ease and that peace is what has really helped me in the last 3 years to like calm down my anxiety. At least that's my advice to students, at least whenever you're in that first year, because I was definitely stressed out and I shouldn't have been. So
Paige?
Giselle said it wonderfully. Carolyn too. I think, gosh, my biggest takeaway would be, and this is going to sound cheesy also, is that everything happens for a reason. If you don't get a job, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. It might feel like it sometimes. It's not. Your career also, it's a progression. Like, that first job's not going to be perfect. Mine certainly wasn't, but it put me on a path to my next job, which I loved and adored. And then it gave me the opportunity to figure out really what I wanted to hone in on, because it was a job where I had lots of different roles. I figured out what I liked, what I didn't like, as Giselle pointed out. That's so important to know. And then that gets you to where you want to be eventually. And it's a moving target also. So keep that in mind. What you want to do today definitely probably won't be what you want to do in 5 years or even tomorrow sometimes. But just keep your head up and know that you're gonna find what is right for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think even those painful rejections or the things that feel like failure, those are kind of the moments that are character building, and they're the moments that I saw this on a social media site, so maybe it isn't like the best piece of advice, but it said, like, you know, when a door closes in your face, it's like the universe protecting you and putting you in the right direction. And I think that's such a beautiful way to think about it. It's just like, you know, you're meant to go in a particular place and you're going to end up there kind of regardless. Katie, any advice for the students before we wrap up?
Yeah, I kind of to echo what you just said, something that actually my mom told me a couple weeks ago, because I'm in the process of applying for jobs, right? I graduate in a semester. And so these fears that our students are having are kind of very relatable to me and very real to me. But it's just, don't let the rejection define you. You have gone through 3 to 4 years already of education. You've dedicated yourself. You've worked hard to get where you are. And don't take that lightly. You know, all of you have such special skills and talents. And just because someone that's looking at your resume might not fit a job, that doesn't mean, that's not a reflection of you as a person, right? These people that are reviewing your applications don't know you as a person, right? And so just keep that in mind while you're going, that rejection is not a reflection of you. You know, like, it will happen, kind of just to echo what these wonderful panelists are saying, it will happen for you eventually. And just keep that in mind and kind of just try and let it roll off your back if possible. I know that that's really easy to say and harder to do, but everyone is talented in their own way. I mean, I've seen it in class. And so it will happen for you guys, like 100%.
Yeah, I agree. And what a beautiful panel. I just couldn't be more grateful for the time and energy and beautiful comments that you've given to all of us today, because it's just been so remarkable. And just seeing the students responding to it in multiple formats, I can see how meaningful this dialogue has been. So thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Paige, so much for today. I'm very grateful, and I think the students are as well. So thank you for taking the time to come chat with us. We really, really appreciate it. But we do have to wrap up for the day. So thank you for coming. I'm about to click the close the live button. I hope you all have a beautiful day. My class, we are back on campus on Monday. But thank you for the wonderful advice. Any final waves or byes, you're welcome to do. Okay, bye everyone.